Aloha kako! Welcome to the Kula Fire Station on this beautiful Tuesday morning. In a moment, we will hear from Maui County Department and Fire Chief Brad Ventura, followed by Assistant Chief Jeff Giese. They will be providing an update on the after-action report of the Maui wildfires of August 8th, 2023. Facilitated questions and answers will follow promptly after remarks conclude. Without further ado, it is my privilege to introduce Chief Brad Ventura.
Aloha, good morning everybody. Welcome to Kula Fire Station. The After Action Report, also known as the AAR, is dedicated to our family and friends and loved ones that we lost on August 8th in the wildfires. I would first like to recognize the amazing work of our firefighters and our ocean safety officers, not only on August 8th, but the month that followed to continue to do all the work, as well as the months that followed to get all the fires contained, and every day since. During that period, we had multiple fires on August 8th that stretched our resources, and it took us months to really get everything under control, especially up in the Kula and Olinda area. The containment of the fires and the recovery of all of our loved ones is what they dedicated their time and efforts to during that period. Today's press conference will cover the AAR, and Chief Giese will provide an overview of the scope of our AAR shortly. There will be no mention of the cause and origin of the fire, as that is still under investigation with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, also known as ATF. Once ATF completes their investigation, their investigative report will be attached as an appendix in its whole and entirety to our fire investigation report, and we will put out our cause and origin once that's complete. It is common for our department to conduct post-incident analysis and after-action reports for certain types of incidents. Due to the scope and size of this disaster, we chose to utilize Western Fire Chiefs Association to assist us in doing our AAR. The AAR will be released today. It will be available on our department county website, and we will also be providing you with a QR code at the conclusion of this press conference. We intend to discuss our AAR with the rest of the state's county fire services, as well as the Western Fire Chiefs Association and our international partners for the International Fire Department Exchange that we've been working with. The reports will go out to each of those parties today after the press conference as well. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Chief Ventura. Up next, Assistant Chief Jeff Giese.
Good morning, everybody. I'm the Assistant Chief for Support Services for the Maui County Department of Fire and Public Safety. In many ways, the after-action report will speak for itself, but we wanted to provide some background and context to help our community understand and appreciate the efforts that yielded this document. This report is not just for the Maui Fire Department. Its audience can extend to our whole community and to the entire fire and emergency services profession. It's been said that in the fire service, we don't deliver perfection. What we do is pursue it relentlessly. That involves learning from our own experiences as well as the experiences of others. To that end, I'd like to start by acknowledging the work done by the Western Fire Chiefs Association, who conducted the after-action review and produced the after-action report for us. They were thorough, they were professional, and the quality of the final product reflects the elevated stature they enjoy in the fire administration community. Some may ask why we decided to contract a third party. Please note, our decision to do so is not an implicit critique of any agencies who decide to conduct their own AARs internally. In fact, the significant majority of after-action reviews are indeed conducted by the affected agencies themselves, and there are certainly benefits to following that path. However, for our department, in this set of circumstances, we determined that enlisting the Western Fire Chiefs Association was the best choice. So why is this? First, given the unprecedented degree of media attention, much of which has been aimed at finding fault with whomever could be accused of sharing in it, we were concerned to avoid accusations of bias. So one benefit of hiring a third party is that the review would be indisputably objective and neutral. Second, while we routinely conduct post-incident analyses and AARs, we've never experienced a disaster of this magnitude. Accordingly, no one within our organization has ever conducted an AAR of this scope. This process and the resulting document are of the highest importance, and we wanted this AAR conducted by personnel well experienced with reviewing disasters like this. We also recognize the truth behind the expression, you don't know what you don't know. So we wanted to bring in the expertise of personnel from the outside who might have recommendations that would have escaped us had we conducted the AAR ourselves. And finally, with so much additional workload post-disaster, we simply would not have enough staff hours available to have gotten this done with the thoroughness that it deserves. This needed to be done right by the highest standards. If we were to devote our limited administrative staff to doing it ourselves, it would either have been shortchanged or other critical work would have been left undone. So for these reasons, we elected to have a neutral, experienced third party conduct our after-action review and produce the report. Why the Western Fire Chiefs Association? They are a well-recognized, well-respected organization in the fire administration community. They've done this before. For other major fires, they were happy to contribute. Their high standards are reflected in the depth and breadth of the research they put into this process. They reviewed copious documents. They conducted interviews with over 200 personnel, not just from Maui Fire, but also from Maui Police Department, Maui Emergency Management Agency, DLNR, FEMA, CAL FIRE, the Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization, University of Hawaii, American Medical Response, and several of our private partners who assist our department with our emergency response efforts. We're confident those who read this document will be assured that we made a wise choice. We also want to take this opportunity to clarify the nature of an after-action review. After-action reviews are deliberate and systematic endeavors to capture what lessons can be learned, excuse me, both by the responding agencies and by the emergency services more broadly. They are about identifying what went well and so should be sustained, as well as identifying what improvements can be made to be better prepared to handle the next incident. Perhaps more important is to understand what an after-action review is not. It is not an investigation. A well-conceived AAR does not point fingers. It does not name names. That's not what we're about. In the fire service, that kind of accusation making doesn't make us better. It only gets in the way of making genuine improvements. So you're not going to find any of that in this document. What you will find is a thorough, well-researched, and well-considered presentation of recommendations and considerations. You'll find information on the structure of our fire department and the context in which we provide services to the County of Maui. You'll find a discussion of factors contributing to the devastation we experienced. You'll find a sequence of events throughout our disaster incidents, as well as an overview of post-incident efforts. And of course, you'll find a set of challenges, observations, and recommendations to help guide this community's fire department as we progress into the future. These observations and recommendations are divided into four broad categories: preparation, mitigation, response, and recovery. Within those four categories, there are 32 highlighted observations, each with a subset of more specific recommendations. Many of these we're already well underway towards achieving. Others may take considerably more time and resources. And some, as is not uncommon, may prove upon more in-depth consideration not to be fruitful avenues to pursue at this time. But we are openly committed, however, to the careful and open-minded consideration of everything presented in this after-action report and the pursuit to completion of the recommendations therein that promise to be of value to our community. I want to speak a little bit to the parameters and scope of the document. It's important to remember, on August 8th, we experienced not just the worst fire in state history, we experienced the two worst fires in state history, occurring at the same time on the same island. And those were happening along with two other major fires, each of which, on their own, would have been newsworthy events. Accordingly, we asked the Western Fire Chiefs Association to produce an AAR covering all four of our major fires that began on August 8th. The document itself covers a time span including the pertinent conditions on August 7th, along with events and actions from August 8th through August 11th. Right? This is when the bulk of our emergency response activity took place. It explicitly does not cover cause and origin of the fires, but rather preparation for, response to, and recovery from these devastating events. As Chief Ventura mentioned, our fire investigation team, in conjunction with industry-leading professionals from the ATF, will be publishing an investigative report once all pertinent data has been collected and thoroughly analyzed. So that is not part of this after-action report. So I hope I've been able to provide you all some valuable context for the report that's about to be made public. I invite you all to access the document, read through it with an open mind. We're hopeful that you'll then gain some insight into the key ideas that will be contributing to the development of our department for years to come. And that should help us keep our community more and more safe from fire and other large-scale disasters. Thank you all very much for your time and attention.
All right, thanks, Chief Giese. Due to the collective and heroic efforts of our firefighters, police officers, and countless community members that day, many lives were saved. There are so many stories of bravery and resilience that we will likely never hear them all. On that daunting day, hundreds of people were rescued as it was an all-hands-on-deck effort for our department and our community. To give you some context, I'll go over some of the staffing. Regular staffing for upcountry Maui is 8 to 10 personnel. On August 8th, we peaked at 39 personnel. Regular staffing for the west side of Maui is 14 to 17 personnel. During the morning hours of August 8th, we had 28 personnel already working in that area, and by the evening, we had 54 firefighters assigned to the west side of Maui in various apparatus and vehicles. There were firefighters fighting the fires in Lahaina as they well knew their homes were burning down at that very moment. There were firefighters who rescued people and kept them within their apparatus for several hours while they continued to evacuate others, get them to safety, and fight the fire at the same time. And it wasn't until later that they were able to get those members of the public out to safe areas of refuge and to the triage points. We had firefighters shuttling people from shelter to shelter in their own personal vehicles because the shelter location had moved. There was an ocean safety officer who was off duty. He chose to drive his moped into the fire to rescue people, and he did this multiple times during August 8th. There were firefighters that could not find available apparatus as we had all of our apparatus in use. They chose to stage their personal vehicles outside of the fire area and hike and walk and run up to the fire and evacuate our kupuna from condos. These are just a few of the many stories of heroism that took place on August 8th. And while I'm incredibly proud of our department's response, I believe we can always continue to improve our efforts. As Assistant Chief Giese pointed out, in the fire service, we don't deliver perfection. What we do is pursue it relentlessly. Likewise, the AAR has 17 challenge areas identified and provides recommendations to strengthen our department. Here are a few areas that we've identified for improvement. First one's to fully stock our relief apparatus. Second's to create a statewide mutual aid program. Third is to create a communication plan to evacuate visitors and residents who speak different languages. Some recommendations that appeared in the AAR that we've already taken action are as follows. To pre-position personnel and vehicles during red flag warnings, to enhance our ready, set, go communications and messaging with the public, increase use of technology within our department, conducting facility assessments of our fire stations to provide adequate power generation during large disasters. We've requested to update our community wildfire protection plans through the help of the Hawaii Wildfire Management Organization, and conduct meetings with FirstNet Authority to do an island-specific analysis of the cell systems here. Increase training in our command and control program. A few recommendations that will be addressed potentially in our FY 2025 budget are as follows. To increase our vehicle apparatus inventory, request for additional fire stations, to request for additional water tankers or tenders, a request for additional firefighters at various locations to include positions in our command and control area. In closing, I'd like to remind everyone that fire mitigation starts at home and is everyone's responsibility, including the fire department. I would like to commend the efforts of the Maui Fire Department, our partners, and our community for their response and resilience in the wake of the Maui wildfires. And I would like to reaffirm our commitment in our pursuit of excellence to serving our community. Mahalo, everyone, for your continued support. Thank you for being here today.
Mahalo, Chief Ventura, Assistant Chief Giese. Now I would like to welcome questions from the media. In the spirit of allowing everyone to ask questions, we kindly ask for your kokua in raising one question per media outlet. You are welcome to ask additional questions after all media outlets have asked their first question. I'm going to start today with Maui-based reporters. So we'll start with A'ali'i.
When is ATF expected to finish their report?
His question is, when is ATF expected to finish their report?
So ATF has not given us a distinct date. They are actively working on it, along with multiple other fires that they're working on. And they recognize the scope and impact of this fire, so they have made it an important project to them, but they have not given us a specific date.
Cami?
Hi, since we haven't been able to see the report yet, could you just explain what the availability was to get firefighters and other help from other islands on this day, and how you think that can be used?
The question is, since we haven't received the report yet, can you explain how you collected this information from other islands and other fire stations?
About getting help.
About getting help.
So just to be clear, we have a finite and limited number of vehicles and resources on this island. We were able to overstaff every single one of them every day for a month. However, when we did get personnel in from other islands, we utilized them in areas that lesser apparatus or no apparatus were needed. So getting people to Maui on August 8th wasn't the problem. We had enough firefighters available and ready to work. It was the amount of apparatus that we had available.
Chelsea?
Can you tell us why firefighters ran out of water and how big of a difference that would have made if folks had water during that heat?
Her question is, can you explain why the firefighters ran out of water, and if they did have access to that water, what difference would it have made?
So I can't speak to the system. It's not our system. We're an end user of the water system, just as all of you are. So I don't know the exact reasons for all the failures. We're working with the water department to identify ways to make it more resilient and move forward. Had we had all the water in the pipes that day, it's been shared with us by companies and areas like CAL FIRE that it would not have made an extreme difference in the fire that we fought that day due to the weather and the conditions that we were facing.
Chivo?
As far as additional personnel, I'm sure it's likely that you have considered volunteer positions in the community for certain jobs that, and maybe using their own vehicles for transporting people or whatever you need.
The question is regarding volunteer personnel. Have you considered using volunteer personnel to help assist with the fire department?
Yeah, I'm happy to address that question. For many years now in Maui County, we have participated in a nationwide program called CERT, Community Emergency Response Teams. And we have provided training to quite a few people throughout the community in a variety of emergency response functions. The idea there is to be able to supplement professional responders and provide some service to your community in the event that professional responders are not able to access your community yet. One of the recommendations in the AAR, and something that we recognized well before the report was published, is we can work on developing more and more the capabilities of our CERT volunteers and get them involved in a wider array of disaster support functions. So that's one of the projects we're working on in conjunction with MEMA and other support agencies.
Wendy, we'll go with you next.
All the requests for funding or for equipment, personnel, and additional fire stations, where is that funding going to come from? And is there a timeline for when you project these resources to become available?
The question is, with all of the required funding that's being requested to fund these new positions and supplies and equipment, where do you expect that funding to come from?
Yeah, our apparatus take approximately 4 years to deliver to Maui at this point. And it's something we've been dealing with for years. It's been progressively getting worse through COVID. And so we've been very proactive in ordering things every year. So the apparatus that showed up this year, for example, in Kula and in Lanai, were ordered right after COVID in 2021, I believe. So the apparatus that we're ordering now and requesting, we won't see on Maui for several years. We're continuously working with our partners in the private sector to make sure we have robust backfill and support from them in the meantime. But we will work, to get those apparatus as quickly as possible. As far as funding goes, we recognize that our department is always an ask for funding, and it's up to the powers that be to balance the budget and to find a way to afford the fire service that our community is requesting of us to deliver.
We'll go to Max next.
Just to follow up on that, does the report talk about delays in acquiring the apparatus maybe contributing to lack of equipment readily needed here the day of August 8th?
His question is, does the report speak to delays in receiving equipment and apparatus? And I'm sorry, Max.
That's a contributing factor, basically not having enough equipment to battle the fires.
As a contributing factor to not being able to battle the fires.
So the AAR does not speak specifically to those two relationships. However, it does recognize that due to our landscape, our terrain, our multi-island community, our size of our population, that we do need more equipment. I'll share with you that in the history of Maui Fire Department, we normally would have maybe 2, if we're fortunate, 3 relief apparatus. Those are apparatus that are staged outside of the normal operations, available for surge and capacity to work in large incidents. On August 8th, we had 7 relief apparatus. So that just kind of goes to show you several things, but the support we've had from mayors and council to continue to bring in new apparatus, and that our mechanic shop is doing their best to keep things up and running even in their later years so that we have apparatus available should we need it.
Jonathan, we'll go with you next.
Thank you very much. Chief, we know that there was a fire earlier in the morning in Lahaina that was quickly contained. How many crews were kept there to check on hotspots at the time that fire reignited later in the afternoon?
The question is, on the morning of August 8th, we know that there were fires in that area. How many crews were asked to check in on the hotspots for those areas?
Yeah, thanks for the question. The crews that were there that morning, I believe the number I gave you was in the 20s of fire personnel that were on scene. And once the fire was contained early in the morning, kind of before this time of day, the main engine company and tanker company from the area remained on scene all morning. They worked with private dozers and they worked with private tenders to put a containment line around the fire, as well as continue to kind of dump water on it. So they remained on scene for well over 5 hours after the fire was contained.
And was there anybody there, just to follow up to that, was there anybody there at the time that the fire did spark back up in that area?
Was there anyone else there to contain the fire when it did spark up later in the day?
So at the time of the 911 calls coming in the afternoon, the company that was assigned to the fire that morning and had gone back to the station was followed up by Engine 11 was there 5 minutes before the afternoon fire had started. And when they passed the fire that area 5 minutes prior to the afternoon fire, they witnessed no smoke or flames in the area.
We'll open up for one more round of questions. Ali?
Can you give us numbers as to how many more staff members, how many more fire stations, how many more apparatus? And apparatus is like fire trucks, right?
The question is, can you give us a sense of the numbers of how many more firefighters, how many more fire stations, and possibly how much more apparatus will be available?
Is your question more for moving forward, like what's needed for Maui County sort of a thing? As a fire chief, we're happy to have a fire station on every corner, but we know we come at a cost. We know that there is an expense to the community, and the community cannot afford that. So in all fairness, we have to open our stations strategically, not only in location, but in how many resources we put in each station. So our goals moving forward are to work with the haiku community to continue moving that project forward, because that project has been in the works since 2007. And then we're working with a public-private partnership in Oluwalu to hopefully get a fire station in that area. Then we're working with council and the mayor's office, as Wailuku is our busiest district right now, to kind of bifurcate Wailuku and Kahului into 3 districts, as it is only 2 right now. And each of those stations could host multiple resources. So when we build a fire station, we're going to be building for the future, not for today. And there's no perfect number or formula of how many firefighters you actually need, but we do know that we've fallen behind, as our call volume has tripled in the last since 2003 when Wailea Station opened. And so we do need to move forward and expand our services to the community.
Cami?
Hi, Chief. In normal circumstances, like you said, you had 4 fires and 2 of them were some of the worst in Hawaii. Would you have left that apparatus that you had at that original fire longer and just waited it out, or was it so desperate to take it somewhere else that it needed to go?
Considering in the wake of the August 8th fire and your ability to put out those fires, would you have left the apparatus, are you talking about in the morning? In the morning of August 8th, would you have left that apparatus at the fire, considering and understanding now what has happened?
Yeah, good question. So to kind of understand what our firefighters go through on a scene is they will contain a fire, extinguish to the best of their ability. They can only see what they can see, and they'll walk the perimeter, they'll walk throughout the fire, and they'll try to determine if the fire is safe to leave. Kula, for example, burned all the way through December. And we had left the scene multiple times, and we would return back to multiple areas of that fire, as a lot of the fire is often hidden under soil, underground, and it takes time to erode that away with either wind or rain. And we had multiple rain storms and events in Kula, and the fire continued to burn underground. And as the fire exposed itself and received some oxygen after the erosion, that's when the hot spots would kind of blow up. Our firefighters are well trained, they're well equipped, they are made, they're basically forced to make decisions every single day with the best information that they have available. And the crew that did that morning and stayed on scene for 5 hours was above and beyond what they normally do for most brush fires that we have here on Maui. And so I would say that, 2020's hindsight, but our crews did everything that they normally do on fires on normal days. That's a good question. It was over a few acres, and that goes kind of to the point where if you had left one resource there, where would you have left it? The top of the fire, the bottom of the fire, and if the fire didn't break out in that area with the winds, would we have even been able to catch it? So hard to say on those situations.
Jonathan?
We know that MEMA wasn't fully operational until after the fire did most of the damage in downtown Lahaina. Did that have an impact on communication with your teams and where your teams were sent as a result?
I think your question is, we are under the assumption that MEMA wasn't fully operational right when the fires started that evening of August 8th. Is that your interpretation? And
According to Maui Police.
according to Maui Police.
Well, I can speak to that question. I was at the Emergency Operations Center from the very beginning. I would not characterize MEMA as not fully operational. There's a distinction to be made between we've officially declared a full activation and being fully operational. So MEMA had resources staffed overnight on August 7th in anticipation of high winds. They called me at 4-something in the morning when the Olinda fire first broke out. We had all of the personnel that would have been there had a official full declaration or full activation been called well in advance. So I think it's a nomenclature misunderstanding based on nomenclature. So I think it's a bit of a misunderstanding that's circulated that MEMA wasn't fully doing what it is supposed to be doing until well into the fires. That's just not really accurate. It's a function of just the semantics of the situation and when they formally declared a full activation at a time when the EOC was already at full capacity and in full operation.
You know, you did have the Maui mayor, though. He was live on one of the local news stations at the time those fires already got damaged. It appears that there was some miscommunication, though, as a result. Is that not accurate?
Was there any miscommunication between the Maui mayor and the time that the EOC became operational?
I'm not going to speak for the mayor or jump to conclusions. I don't know exactly what information was shared with him at that time. We've all seen what we've seen. And, when you asked about communications between MEMA and our responders, we had what we needed to because we had the staff there for our responders that night.
Chelsea?
Did firefighters have training in urban conflagration, and if not, is that being considered now?
I'm sorry, in urban...
Conflagration, it's a technical term for firefighting in high-dense areas.
Okay. Given firefighting in high-dense areas, did the firefighters have coverage for that area and for the areas during the August 8th wildfires?
For training.
For training.
So our department does have a pretty extensive fireground operation program that our firefighters all receive training in. When you talk about conflagration and an urban conflagration in dense areas such as Lahaina and that Lahaina Luna area, when you add the factors of the wind in, no training is going to overcome what they face that day. They're well equipped and trained to respond to multiple structure fires, which we have had in the past. But when you have that extent of weather and fire going on, as mentioned with some of our partners in CAL FIRE, at that point it's really an evacuate all sort of a situation and kind of stop fighting the fire to save lives.
We'll take just a few more questions. Wendy?
Yeah, this question is regarding communications. Was there any specific recommendations made towards communications, and how can you help us understand how, from the field, the community gets information on evacuation?
So Wendy's question is, can you speak to the communication that occurred during the fires, and are there any improvements made to those types of communications when fighting fires of this magnitude? Is that correct?
Yeah, and the evacuations as well.
And the evacuations as well.
I'll try to address that question. So there are multiple ways that communications take place in the event of a disaster. One of our primary means is via our 800 megahertz radio system, which kudos to those who developed the system, remained operational throughout the incident. We also communicate via cell phone messaging and phone calls, and of course in person at the Emergency Operations Center. I've been doing this 24 years. I've been to countless numbers of discussions about what could have gone better. Every single time communication is mentioned, there's always an opportunity to get better and better at communication. There have been multiple efforts underway in terms of coordination from county agencies and state agencies to find better ways of establishing common operating pictures and communicating that clearly to the public. That is done through the Emergency Operations Center as well as through Central Dispatch. We have emergency alert notification systems. You all probably get them texted you on your phone. There's the alert system we're all familiar with from when we were kids that comes across the TV and the radio. There's social media posting. This moving forward will certainly be one of the areas we focus on. It always is, and there's room for improvement, and we're all dedicated to getting better and better at ensuring that the public gets consistent, clear, timely information throughout the course of a disaster.
Max?
Just curious about releasing the report today, a day before the AG is expected to release their findings. Was that intentional?
Was there any intention to releasing our report the day before the AG's report was going to be released?
So the Fire Commission meets on Thursday, and it was our intent to get the press conference done this week prior to them receiving the AAR, because that's my boss and that's the audience that I feel should be receiving it sooner than later. So because there would be interest in it, like we have today, we wanted to just time it so that we would talk about it today, release it this afternoon, and they would have a day or two to look over it before our Fire Commission meeting on Thursday. Other than that, there's really no correlation between the two.
Okay, last question, Chivo?
Talking about the wind, 70, 80 mile an hour gusts, were there any areas that really got in the way, and is there any mitigation plans for the future that people learn from those incredible hurricane force?
Considering the extreme gusts on the afternoon of August 8th, 70 plus mile an hour gusts, is there any mitigation that has been done to any specific areas to prepare for gusts like that, or is anything that we can do moving forward to prepare fire mitigation techniques in regards to those types of winds?
So there's a few things in this world we don't control, unfortunately wind being one of them. However, we are going to closely work with our partners on the rebuild of Lahaina. I think some of the areas that were mentioned in the police AAR where people got trapped were due to just downed trees. So I think people will look at their landscape a little differently moving forward. We'll also be working with the utility company to recommend areas where maybe our main points of egress in and out of neighborhoods that we could recommend putting utilities underground. Of course, it's up to them to work through that, but we can make recommendations on how we want to move people once we finish all of our data collection from our evacuation planning. Thanks.
Mahalo nui. This formally concludes our press conference. Aloha.